Nigeria, by extension Africa, battles a growing youthful population and with little or no meaningful engagement leaves a ticking time bomb on our hands. We are a blessed continent with great wealth, both in people and material. Our focus on ways remains driving conversations that affects us all. Topics in the news, social concerns, politics, leadership, governance, empowerment, resource management, conflict management, finance, SME sustainability, technological innovation, food security, health, education, brain drain, our well-being, citizenship, and much more. Our goal is to continuously drive these conversations, keep them burning at the table to effect a positive change, both for our nation and continent. Ways, what are you saying, has a secret ingredient that completes the conversation every single episode, and that ingredient is you. Our past conversations shaped our yesterday. To shape our tomorrow, we must keep talking. So, I want to hear you. Be a part of our live conversations Mondays through Fridays. And let's all have our say.
The long-standing tensions between the United States, Iran, and Israel have once again captured global attention with recent escalation, raising fears of a broader regional conflict. Now, however, emerging signs of a possible ceasefire, or at least a strategic de-escalation, have prompted fresh analysis, not only in the Middle East, but also far beyond. For Africa, a continent deeply intertwined with global energy markets, trade routes, and security alliance, the implication of these geopolitical shifts are both immediate and far-reaching. It's another episode on your favorite primetime show. My name is Messi Ebokpo. Now, today we are exploring and asking the question, what does the U.S.-Iran-Israel conflict and a potential ceasefire mean for Africa? Well, our guest is Naeem Jeenah, a senior researcher at the Mapumbwe Institute. He's also a geopolitical expert and an author. Now, remember that Waze is about you. You are the why in the Waze, so join the conversation daily and add your voice. All you need to do is just head over to our YouTube channel at Official Upgrade TV. Hit the subscribe button, like, share, and invite your friends to join the show now. I'd like to hear your thoughts on the conversation when the phone lines are open. As always, I'd like you to ponder on my quote for today. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, the future attacks would be far greater and a lot easier. Well, that's according to the President of the United States, Donald Trump. We'll delve much into this much later, but first off, let's head on a quick break. And when I return, I'll tell you what I found in the news today. Please stay with me.
Tell us you're a Nigerian without saying a word. Energy security is one of the most pressing issues for many developing countries like Nigeria. And if there's going to be any meaningful progress, addressing our energy issues is non-negotiable.
I need to see light for my house. Make them do something.
Band A is expensive. I literally have to turn off all my appliances just to reduce costs.
We need light.
Introducing the Energy Outlook, your go-to show for everything energy. Every week, we'll bring you the latest insights, innovation, and in-depth analysis of Nigeria's energy sector. From policy discussions to regulatory insights, we'll analyze the key decisions influencing growth and sustainability in the energy sector. We'll bring you the human stories behind the headlines, giving you a personal perspective on the broader energy challenges. Join me every Friday at 6 p.m. for the Energy Outlook, your guide to the future of energy, where energy means business.
You're still watching Ways hashtag What Are You Saying? And thank you for tuning in tonight. Now, this is the time where I bring you up to speed with what I found in the news. So tonight, I found 3 stories, and I'll just share them with you immediately. Now, first off is that the customs actually intercept a 3.6 billion naira dry donkey skin in Imo State. The Nigerian Customs Service, Federal Operation Unit, Zone C to be precise, in Owerri, that's Imo State, intercepts a 40-foot container loaded with dry donkey skin meat for export today, being Tuesday. Now, the container was discovered after a thorough inspection by officers, and the item seized is classified as dry salted donkey skin, and it was actually meant for export. However, the federal government's this is also on the federal government's export prohibition list because of their threat to biodiversity and illegal trade in endangered species. Now, according to the total of the dry skin of a donkey, we're looking at 3,200 pieces of donkey skin were found and packed in various sacks. Well, it's important that you note that the donkey skin is on the prohibited list of the federal government of export because of the threat that it poses to the biodiversity and illegal trade. It endangers as well. But that's one of it. Now, the president, another one that I found, mostly is because of the headlines. The president said, in his words, I quote, unfortunately, we're not able to bring you the audio of that particular speech from Mr. President. He said that we're making farming more sexy to youths. That's what the president's quoted to say. Now, President Bola Tinubu administration says he's in partnership with the international bodies, equipping Nigerian youth with modern agricultural skills for financial provision of over 2,000 advanced tractors and 50 bulldozers, 12 mobile workshops, and 9,000 specialized implants to drive mechanized agriculture more attractive for youth. Well, the president said that, which I agree. He said that, you can't use 18th century methods for the 21st century farming. So mechanized farming has been a conversation that I've had over time, 100 years ago. I mean, way back when I was in college, if you like to say. Now, that's one of the news that actually caught my interest today. Another one is that the Nigerian Army, it's more like a plus, even though I've seen several comments and remarks on the internet. Nigeria has been ranked the 3rd most powerful military in Africa. That's according to the 2025 Global Firepower Index. The annual report assesses over 60 indicators, including manpower, equipment, budget, logistics. Now, Egypt tops the list, followed by Algeria in 2nd place, and South Africa ranks 4th. That's the ranking highlights showing Nigeria's growing defense capacities and capability and regional influence. That's the much that we can take at this point in time for what's in the news. We'll take a quick break, and when we return, we're delving straight to the conversation. Please stay with us.
Life is made up of moments, some that fill us with joy, others that test our strength. Welcome to Heartlines. This is our space to explore the highs and lows of human connection, the love, the heartbreak, and resilience that shapes our life. From relationships to friendships, parenting to partnerships, and so much more. Every week, we share stories and conversations that define us, navigating love, separations, the struggles of parenting, dealing with anxiety and managing the pressures and stress of life. Real conversations that bring us closer, helping us heal, grow, and connect. So join me Mondays through Fridays at 10 p.m. for Heartlines, the show where we connect hearts, have real conversations with real people, one story at a time. Nigeria, by extension Africa, battles a growing youthful population and with little or no meaningful engagement, leaves a ticking time bomb on our hands. We are a blessed continent with great wealth, both in people and material. Our focus on ways remains driving conversations that affects us all. Topics in the news, social concerns, politics, leadership, governance, empowerment, resource management, conflict management, finance, SME sustainability, technological innovation, food security, health, education, brain drain, our well-being, citizenship, and much more. Our goal is to continuously drive these conversations, keep them burning at the table to effect a positive change, both for our nation and continent. Ways, what are you saying, has a secret ingredient that completes the conversation every single episode, and that ingredient is you. Our past conversations shaped our yesterday. To shape our tomorrow, we must keep talking. So, I want to hear you. Be a part of our live conversations Mondays through Fridays. And let's all have our say.
Now, many thanks for staying tuned and tuning in at this point in time. You're watching Ways, right? And we're delving straight to the conversation for tonight. Well, the world, they say, is a global village. While Africa is not directly involved in the core conflict between Iran, Israel, and, of course, you have now Iran, Israel, and, okay. I beg your pardon. Now, while Africa is not directly involved in the conflict, there's a some people say that there might just be a trickle-down effect. What's happening, in other parts of the world could actually have an impact, on this other side of the divide. But this is what we're going to find out in the course of our conversation tonight with our guest who's joining us, Jeenah. Thank you so much, Jeenah, for making out time to be part of the conversation this evening.
Thank you.
Well, so we're here, and I know that a lot of people would have concerns for many Africans that are watching tonight and Nigerians that this Middle East conflict may seem far removed. But why should Africa care? Why should Nigeria care? Why should South Africa care about what is happening between the U.S., Iran, and, of course, Israel?
Well, there are multiple reasons. I mean, the one most obvious one, which everyone kind of talks about, is the issue of oil prices. If this conflict continued, if the conflict, particularly between Iran and the United States, got deeper and more intense, there was the possibility that Iran would close the Strait of Hormuz, for example, through which 20% of the world's oil flows. And that would have created a scarcity, increased the prices, all of that. So, there's a big impact on the global economy and African economies as well. Some Nigerians might be not too unhappy about oil price going up because Nigeria produces oil. But in general, I think it would be a problem. But there are also bigger and other geopolitical issues that should be of great concern to Africans. I mean, the first one is that we are actually, as a continent, we're not that far from West Asia. We actually connected at Egypt. We connected to West Asia, what is called the Middle East. The fact that a small country just on the other side of that, which is Israel, can go to the extent of launching an almost 2-week assault on another country, which frankly is much more distant from it than some of the countries on our continent are, and believe that they can get or convince the United States to join them in a war that is completely illegal. I mean, when Israel began its assault, Its attack on on Iran was illegal because there's no such thing as a preemptive strike in international law. There was no imminent threat from Iran to Israel. The assassinations of academics, scientists is illegal under international law. The bombing of nuclear sites is banned under international law. So, carrying out an operation which in its entirety is illegal because they believe that this country and these people might perhaps be a rival in terms of their power in the region. What does that mean for African states? I think is of great concern for us. We know that Israel works on the continent, that there are several states on our continent that are very close to Israel, some of whom have specific treaties with them. Morocco has signed the Abraham Accords with Israel, and there have been rumors in the past 2 weeks that Moroccan soldiers have been joining the Israeli occupation forces. Israel is committing a genocide in Gaza, which again borders our continent. And so the penetration of Israel on our continent, militarily, in terms of security, in terms of intelligence, in terms of the agricultural projects, the cultural projects, the religious projects to cultivate Christian Zionism on the continent, etc., should be extremely concerning for us. So that I think is the second group of factors. The third one is that with the United States having been directly involved in this, what does that relationship mean for us on the African continent? Many African countries, perhaps most African countries, have some kind of reliance on the US in terms of their trade or aid. Many have now suffered after USAID's operations were shut down. But right now, for example, there's a South African trade delegation, official government delegation in the US. And many of us believe that it's because this delegation was there that when the Americans attacked Iran on Saturday, that we had such a weak response, a weak statement from the South African government because they didn't want to negatively affect the work of that delegation. This is not exclusive to South Africa. This is how many African states behave. We are no longer able to act independently, those of us that ever were, because we are beholden in some ways. And finally, the bigger picture of this is that what we saw taking place in the past 2 weeks, or a week and a half, with the war that was imposed on Iran, is the way in which countries of the western part of the global north, let's say, have rallied behind Israel and rallied behind the US, even though both of these states' attacks on Iran were illegal. I spoke about the Israeli attacks, but even the United States attack on Iran is illegal under international law. There was no threat that Iran posed. They just went in, bombed nuclear installations, nuclear facilities, which, as I said, is banned under international law, and then left with no accountability and no concern that they will be made accountable. Despite that illegality, you had Germany, you had France, you had France now with the American attack has raised some question. But with the Israeli attack, France, Germany, the UK, other European states lined up behind Israel to proclaim that Israel has a right to defend itself against a country that had not threatened it. And Germany went to the extent of condemning Iran for attacking Israel even before Iran responded or retaliated to Israel's initial attack. So what we saw in the past 2 weeks that should make us really concerned is the way in which these Western global North powers band together against a country of the global South. And the concern here is that in any such instance, they would do the same if the country that was on the receiving end of such aggression were an African country. In fact, frankly, an African country might be for them even more get even more attack than Iran did. So I think that there's lots of reasons for us to be concerned as Africans.
Okay. So let's go back to one of the things that you did mention. You talked about oil prices, and we've seen that oil prices dropped by 4 to about 5% following the ceasefire that's been declared. Hopefully that stays. But do you think that it's a good thing or it's a bad thing, especially for African countries that are oil producers, like Nigeria?
Well, in the immediate term, it might be a good thing, right? Or it might be seen as a good thing. Oil prices go up. A country that a substantial part of its economy depends on oil, their income goes up for a short while. But a volatile oil market is not very healthy, even for such countries. What we saw happening, I mean, when the Americans blasted Iran, the oil price went up, and then after that ceasefire announcement, then went down again. So that volatility is not necessarily good. We know that in such cases, when oil prices go up, often countries make greater investment in their oil industry, and then if the price suddenly crashes, they've lost a lot of money, they're in debt, etc., etc. So stability in the market is much better than this kind of volatility that is a problem. This is the same reason why in the United States. I mean, the United States is a net oil exporter. They don't buy oil. They don't have to buy oil from anyone. They export oil and gas as well. But there's concern in the United States if the oil price goes up. The other thing, of course, is that who in Nigeria benefits if the oil price goes up? It's the oil corporations that benefit. Yes, the state receives a share of increased taxes or increased share of taxes. But for ordinary people, the price of their petrol goes up. The fact that Nigeria has oil doesn't mean that you're going to pay less at the petrol pump when the general oil price goes up. Your price also goes up. And so for ordinary people, for whom the petrol costs is a big part of their monthly expense, it can be a serious problem.
But let me share your thoughts before we dig deeper to all of this. The ceasefire is here, and what are your thoughts? Israel has never been one to respect ceasefire. We've seen that happen a couple of times with Ukraine. What do you think about this ceasefire deal?
So on X, Twitter, whatever, someone asked the XAI Grok this question about how many ceasefires has Israel violated, and Grok's answer was 962. Now I haven't checked it myself, but that's quite a fascinating number. As far as Israel is concerned, this is not over. Remember that Israel had 3 objectives for this assault on Iran, and believed that it would achieve these objectives within a week or two. The first objective was to destroy Iran's nuclear capacity. That has not happened, even with the American attack. The extent of the damage we're not entirely sure of, but the nuclear program has not been destroyed. They had moved already much of the enriched uranium, etc. The second Israeli objective was to destroy Iran's ballistic missiles stock and program. That clearly hasn't happened. I mean, until last night, or early this morning, Iran still had ballistic missiles that it was firing at Israel. And the third objective for Israel was either a regime change in Iran or to weaken the Iranian state to such an extent that it would become completely useless, weak, fragile, and almost a failed state. That hasn't happened. The Iranian population rallied behind the flag when they were attacked, even those who were dissenters and disagree with the government, etc. So Iran has not achieved any of its objectives. Israel has not achieved any of its objectives against Iran. And for Israelis then, this is one chapter in an ongoing war. So if they feel that the opportunity presents itself again, they could do this again, or do the kind of thing that they've been doing for years against Iran. Assassination of scientists, attacking Iranian assets in Syria, for example, soldiers, bases, etc. All of those things. I think we can expect that Israel has not stopped with that, despite the ceasefire, and that should be worrying for us. The other worrying thing, of course, is, as the head of the Israeli military said today, that they now turn their focus on back to Gaza. That doesn't mean that in the past 2 weeks their focus was off Gaza. I mean, the daily massacres in Gaza, number of people killed in Gaza in the past 2 weeks, has been more than the average for most days for the past 20 months. And so the genocide in Gaza continues, and that too, again, should be of concern for us. So, yes, there's a ceasefire. It's a temporary pause in a sense. But Israel certainly is not out of its aggressive posture.
Well, so I know that some quarters are excited about the ceasefire. I mean, the world is quaking, and you know, the president of the United States will say that peace, congratulations, and peace to the world. But there were concerns before the ceasefire, and then one of such concern is about, you know, the shipping lanes, the shipping routes, like the Suez Canal, the Red Sea, which is very key for Africa's, you know, food and fertilizer import. Now, do you think that these concerns are still valid despite, you know, the ceasefire?
Well, I think in general, the shipping lanes are not, you know, after the ceasefire, not seriously negatively affected. However, as far as the Red Sea is concerned, let's remember that the Ansar Allah in Yemen have vowed that they will continue preventing shipping through the Red Sea going to Israel, that as long as the genocide in Gaza continues. So Red Sea shipping, we can expect, will continue to be largely stalled until that ends. But, you know, Africa is a big continent with a massive coastline, and the Red Sea, even if it is blocked, affects us to some extent, but not entirely. So yeah, I don't think that that's going to have a massive impact on the continent.
Mm. So we continue to talk about, you know, other concerns. Now, another one is that some people also think that with what's going on, there might just be a trickle-down effect on extremist group in the Sahel region. You know, they might take advantage of what is really going on. Now, being an expert that you are, do you think that there might likely be a possibility of having the continent being tensed up?
I don't think so, no. Remember that many of those groups that you are referring to are not pro-Iranian. They are not supported by Iran, nor do they support Iran. And so this spat between Israel and Iran in the past 2 weeks doesn't have much of an impact on what happens there. I also don't think that there's a big psychological advantage for them. So I don't think it's going to worsen or improve that situation, certainly.
Mm. All right, we'll just take a quick break now, and when we return, the conversation continues right here. Please stay with us.
Tell us you're a Nigerian without saying a word. Energy security is one of the most pressing issues for many developing countries like Nigeria. And if there's going to be any meaningful progress, addressing our energy issues is non-negotiable.
I need to see light for my house. Make them do something.
Band A is expensive. I literally have to turn off all my appliances just to reduce costs.
We need light.
Introducing the Energy Outlook, your go-to show for everything energy. Every week, we'll bring you the latest insights, innovation, and in-depth analysis of Nigeria's energy sector. From policy discussions to regulatory insights, we'll analyze the key decisions influencing growth and sustainability in the energy sector. We'll bring you the human stories behind the headlines, giving you a personal perspective on the broader energy challenges. Join me every Friday at 6 p.m. for the Energy Outlook, your guide to the future of energy, where energy means business.
Life is made up of moments, some that fill us with joy, others that test our strength. Welcome to Heartlines. This is our space to explore the highs and lows of human connection, the love, the heartbreak, and resilience that shapes our life. From relationships to friendships, parenting to partnerships, and so much more. Every week, we share stories and conversations that define us, navigating love, separations, the struggles of parenting, dealing with anxiety and managing the pressures and stress of life. Real conversations that bring us closer, helping us heal, grow, and connect. So join me Mondays through Fridays at 10 p.m. for Heartlines, the show where we connect hearts, have real conversations with real people, one story at a time.
You're still watching Ways hashtag. What are you saying? Now, if you're just tuned in, we're talking about and asking the question, yes, the conflict in the Middle East is ongoing, but does it have any impact? Does it have any ripple effects on the continent, Africa? What does it mean for us? And that's what we're saying. Right. We would like you also to hear your thoughts on the conversation, what you think about what's happening in the Middle East, and especially with the prices of, oil, petrol, I beg your pardon, that has actually gone up, really, just as though Naim actually understands that it will go up. It has gone up in Nigeria. Some parts of Lagos already, we're hearing the petrol prices. Petrol is selling for 1,000 naira right now at a fuel station. But we'd like to hear what you have to say now. All you need to do is join the conversation by sending an SMS or WhatsApp to the number 081-8038-4663. The phone lines are also open. It means you can call the numbers 070-2500 and 7749 or 070-1424 and 24 and 20. I'd like to take those numbers again. SMS or WhatsApp to the number 081-8038 and 46 and 63, the number to send your messages to. The phone lines, the number to call is 070-25 0077 and 49 or 070-1424 and 24 and 20. Let's hear what you have to say, on this particular conversation that we're having. Naim, Jeenah is still here with us. Once again, thank you so much for joining this conversation tonight.
Thank you, Mercy.
All right. So today, the summit actually happened. NATO summit happened today with the world leaders gathered despite the tension. And do you think that this decision could, in any way influence the fragile ceasefire between the U.S., Iran, and, of course, Israel?
Well, I don't think the NATO discussions will influence the ceasefire as such. This has now become, or Iran, I should say, has now become it seems, the major item on the agenda of NATO. So there'll be lots of discussion about it. And again, on your topic about what all this means for Africa, I think we should be looking carefully at what comes out of that NATO summit, how NATO responds to this, because how NATO responds and relates to Iran after the summit is an indication of how they view, frankly, much of the global South, including us in Africa. So I think it's an important summit from that perspective for us to watch. In fact, there was the possibility of tensions in the summit because one of the main issues to be discussed was the American demand that all NATO member states should commit 5% of their GDP to defense. And that was going to be a debating issue. I think that might actually become a bit secondary to the Iran issue. So we'll see what happens.
Yes, I know that it might just also be too early to begin to preempt, but then again, some experts and analysts are already worried that with the demand to commit 5% GDP to defense, should it not mean that Africa should be concerned, the Sahel, the Red Sea?
Yes, we should be concerned. I mean, if European states, for example, start committing more money to their defense, they'll say, of course, and they have said that it's because of Russia. But what that means globally should be a matter of concern for all of us. Europe has begun its new program, Rearm Europe, as they're calling it, after they realized or decided that they can't continue to rely on the United States for their defense, which means that they will, even if they don't reach 5%, that they've already begun the process of increasing, building their arms industries or strengthening their arms industries, committing more money to that, etc. And as we've seen, not now, but for decades, a lot of those arms, those weapons get turned on African states. Whether we're talking about France or other states, the repressive states in Africa that they've supported, or militant groups that they've supported for their own purposes. I mean, right now we're still sitting with something close to a genocide on our continent in Sudan. The RSF, which started this civil war in Sudan, received tons of money from the European Union. For what purpose? In order to prevent African migrants from reaching Europe. Big issue for the Europeans. They don't want African migrants. How much of that kind of money comes onto the continent for those kinds of nefarious agendas is a matter that we should be concerned about. And if Europe is increasing its arms industry, you can bet that it's not all going to be directed towards Russia. And at some point, when they reach an agreement with Russia and a peace deal with Russia about Ukraine, whatever that deal might look like, you have this huge new arms industry developing in Europe. And where will all of that go? What will it be used for? I think that it is a matter of concern for us as NATO kind of strengthens itself, strengthens its weapons industry.
Well, so in all of this, what would you say that should be the focus for us as a continent? What should heads of various countries in Africa be doing at this point in time? We also know that we have regional government, regional bodies, although a lot of people have argued that they're not very effective, the African Union, the ECOWAS. But again, I'd like to hear your thoughts. What exactly should the continent be doing? What should these bodies be doing at this point in time?
Well, we really need to become much more serious about the kinds of things that we say that sound very nice. About increasing trade within the continent. We have the African Continental Free Trade Agreement and Free Trade Area, about building on that. ensuring that that begins to work and begins to work in a way that serves us, that makes us somewhat self-sufficient in some respects. So increase the trade within the continent so that we become less reliant on the outside, but also other issues like food security, for example. The fact that in Africa we have many countries that import more than half of their grains, wheat and maize, from outside the continent is shocking. When at one point Africa as a whole was self-sufficient in this and exporting. So I think that this kind of a discussion, there are hopeful statements that we hear, but we've been hearing for years now from the African leadership in the African Union and national leaderships, etc. But there needs to be much greater seriousness about a plan and implementation of a plan that sees African states and African nations working together to ensure their food security and other forms of security as well, so that we might become resilient against outside forces, and we might grow our independence from our reliance or against the reliance that we have on many outside forces. And this notion that we import security from places such as Israel and the United States. Many countries on our continent do. I think that needs to really be seriously re-examined for the threat that poses for the sovereignty of our states and our continent.
I mean, it brings me also, because from time to time I continue to ponder, for us as a people and as a country, Nigeria. I don't know if it's the same thing that's applicable to other parts of the country. Now, you have talked about, economically, Africa as a continent. It's time for us to begin to sit back and not just say nice words, but begin to take the right action to ensure that some of the basic things that we need to move the economy forward is working, to ensure that we can strengthen trade within the continent, which is actually a very good thing. I mean, it's quite sad to think that we still have to import, some of these things that we can get from within. Again, what then should be the concern for security, especially when we, apart from importing security for different parts of the continent as it is, what about the reliance on, these equipment? For instance, the guns, the weapons. The word would be the weapons. The fact that, some of the weapons that we get to use, to combat insecurity internally and sometimes externally is also highly dependent on the global north. So how can all of this be addressed in the midst of all that's going on right now globally?
Well, I think the one issue, of course, a bigger and more long-term issue is how African states understand security. I think in many of our states, many states on the continent, the understanding of security is about the elites protecting themselves from the rest of their nation. So we need to redefine what security means, and then what means need to be employed to ensure that security. If our focus is on security of all people, of all citizens of our countries, then the way that we deal with that and the tools that we believe are necessary for that become different than if we have states that have a kind of repressive outlook. Now, let me, on the security thing, use South Africa as an example. And the reason for this is that everyone knows that South Africa has taken a strong position against Israel. We took the case to the International Court of Justice, the genocide case against Israel. Currently, we have no diplomatic staff in Tel Aviv. The Israeli embassy doesn't have any staff. Tensions are very high between the two at a diplomatic level, etc. With that kind of background, let me say this. we have South Africans who go and fight in the Israeli occupation forces, even right now while a genocide has been taking place. Many of them have posted their videos and pictures online, etc., very proud of being part of this genocide that's happening in Gaza. These people don't stay there, they come back home. Whether it's South Africa or other countries on the continent, they come back home and then pose a security threat back home. Frankly, you know, we often talk about other groups that people from our continent go and join certain groups, and what's the security threat when they get back home. In this case, we have a definite security threat here. Secondly, that the household security market in South Africa, a large part of it is equipment. So this, I'm talking about, you know, our alarms in our homes and beams and CCTV cameras, etc. A lot of that comes from Israel. It's Israeli technology. We have a South African telecommunications company, Telkom, the state-owned company. The billing systems for Telkom are done by an Israeli company, and the databases for that sit in Israel, not in South Africa. And now all of this poses serious security threats for our country and other countries on the continent, and a threat to our sovereignty. We've had a case, for example, where the so-called chief rabbi in South Africa has asked that certain communities where there are majority Jews, and you know, the Jewish people in the community, they all haven't necessarily asked for this, but he has, that they be given certain exclusions to be able to carry out services for themselves. So certain business areas have this kind of arrangement. In Johannesburg, for example, where they don't use the city's garbage collection. For example, the businesses get together, they do their own, because maybe they don't want to do it once a week, they want it more than that. So he made this proposal about certain Jewish majority areas, and the problem with that is that he also wants the police then to keep out of those areas, and those areas would be policed by private security companies. And many of these companies get training, equipment, etc. from Israel. Now, I'm saying that what this poses is a threat to the sovereignty of the country and of the nation. Now, this is just Israel I'm giving you an example of, but the number of private security companies that are based in the US, and we're seeing, you know, mercenaries from the US all over the world now. In the midst of the genocide in Gaza, the Israelis and Americans have set up this fake organization, Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. It's not a humanitarian foundation, not an aid organization. It's run by mercenaries, by so-called security contractors. They lure starving people to their points, and then the Israelis bomb them and shoot at them. These kinds of infiltrations onto our continent would, in many ways, with the blessing of our governments, needs to be of great concern for us. And the fact is that with many of these things, perhaps not all, but with many of these things, we have on our continent some of those technologies, but there are also other technologies that are available. I mean, I'm sure most of what I just mentioned now, the same technologies would be obtainable from a place like China, for example, or South Korea. So I think that these kinds of very quiet infiltrations seriously threaten sovereignty and security in many of our states, and we should be worried about that.
Okay, so could you please speak to the functions and what the regional bodies, you know, should be doing? ECOWAS, AU, the peace, the Horn of Africa, and lots of them. What do you think that they should be doing? And again, I also have a concern as regards why you don't also find any sort of communication sort of statement, engaging with global issues as this? Because from our conversation tonight, we can clearly see that whatever happens, in the Middle East or any parts of the country would definitely have an impact on Africa. And so how come we constantly experience this silence, amongst these regional bodies? And again, what should they be doing at this point in time, speaking to their different functions?
So the regional bodies, the regional economic communities, as they're called, historically we found that they've actually been very useful in the sphere of what we're talking about, security. The SADC, ECOWAS, the East African community, in assisting with stability in the region, in intervening in some kind of way diplomatically, and sometimes, as you know, in West Africa, even sometimes militarily, in order to stabilize the situation in the region, etc. So they have played that kind of role. Unfortunately, in the past few years, that role has been, for the regional communities, has been weakening. That security role has been weakening. And these regional communities in general have weakened, and their role has weakened. And so we found in many parts of our continent the kinds of phenomena that we thought we were past with the formation of the African Union and soon thereafter. Those things are recurring. Coups, militancy, violence, etc. So I think that this weakening of these regional communities is a cause of not only concern but instability. The African Union, as a result, because the way that this has been structured is that, in a sense, the African Union gets its strength from the regional communities and then from the individual nation states. With the weak regional communities, the African Union itself is weaker. And your question about why, for example, at the level of the African Union or at the level of the Pan-African Parliament, I haven't seen any statements about the Israeli attack on Iran or the American attack on Iran, even though, as we've been discussing for the past 45 minutes, these have serious immediate, short, middle and long-term, medium and long-term implications for us on the continent. But simply burying our heads in the sand is not helpful. In some cases, this is an attempt to curry favor with powerful states, like with the US. In other cases, it's a false kind of idea that it's far away and so it doesn't affect us. It all does affect us. And I think that the fact that we don't see the continent's peace and security as being linked to the peace and security of the rest of the world, and particularly other countries in the global south, I think that is worrying. I think that our political leaderships on the continent are missing the mark and dropping the ball.
Naim, Jeenah, thank you so much for being part of the conversation tonight. We have to call it a night at this point in time. I really do appreciate you once again. Thank you so much for being part of the show.
Thank you very much, Mercy.
All right, then have a good night rest. And for you that tuned in, thank you as well. We have had an amazing conversation, 8 o'clock up until this moment. We will definitely return tomorrow, all things being equal. Now, before I go, do ensure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't done that already. It's at Official Upgrade TV. You can interact with us further, drop a comment, and most importantly, you have to follow us on all of our social media platforms and engage. Now, remember to like, share, comment, and invite your friends and family to watch and follow us because it's very interesting, trust me. Now, if you miss our quote for today, this is what he says: Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, the future attacks would be far greater and a lot easier. That's according to the President of the United States. I will see you tomorrow at 8 p.m. Enjoy the rest of your evening. My name is Messi Ebokbo. Good night.
Nigeria, by extension Africa, battles a growing youthful population, and with little or no meaningful engagement, leaves a ticking time bomb on our hands. We are a blessed continent with great wealth, both in people and material. Our focus on ways remains driving conversations that affects us all. Topics in the news, social concerns, politics, leadership, governance, empowerment, resource management, conflict management, finance, SME sustainability, technological innovation, food security, health, education, brain drain, our well-being, citizenship, and much more. Our goal is to continuously drive these conversations, keep them burning at the table to effect a positive change, both for our nation and continent. Ways, what are you saying, has a secret ingredient that completes the conversation every single episode, and that ingredient is you. Our past conversations shaped our yesterday. To shape our tomorrow, we must keep talking. So, I want to hear you. Be a part of our live conversations Mondays through Fridays. And let's all have our say.